Welcome to the Office Hours with Distinctions for Life. I'm your host, Ron Davis. Thank you for tuning in. I began these live streams in the great pandemic of 2020 as a chance to connect with interesting people. And there is very little format to these shows, and their purpose is whatever I want it to be at the time. Today, we are going to be talking with a new acquaintance of mine, Stu Swineford. Stu is a digital marketing person, and he has a specific kind of digital marketing I had never heard of before called conscious marketing. And we are going to talk about that as well. If you are watching this as a replay and you just stumbled on it, searching for Stu's name or something, I would encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the Distinctions for Life YouTube channel. What I do is that every week on Sundays, I put out a new distinction for life. A distinction is a small change that makes a big difference in your life. And those come out every Sunday. We are also doing these live streams at least through the month of May. I've decided to at least go another month, once or twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2. So if you'd like to know when that's going to happen, you need to subscribe to the channel. If you're on YouTube, it's right below. If you're on Facebook, you can like our page and you will get notifications of new live streams and new videos as well via Facebook instead of via YouTube. But now we need to get to the meat of this, to the actual interview. And my guest today is Stu Swineford. Stu is coming to us live from Colorado. That's right. Isn't it, Stu? You're in Colorado.
Yeah, I'm actually up at my house. I live in the foothills, kind of west of Denver.
Okay. All right. And Stu, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself. And I like to say this is your origin story. So it is what you do and how you came to do it. So can you tell the viewers that?
Yeah, for sure. And first, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to chat with you and your viewers. And hope we can bring some value to the table today. So I started out as a copywriter back in the early '90s. I was working for a bike shop, catalog bike shop in Boulder, Colorado, and it was kind of a stopping point for me. I was a bike racer at the time, and was also applying to med schools. So I went to school to study medicine. Got into a school out in California and decided that I didn't really think that medicine was the right path for me. So I took a big breath and decided to forego that opportunity. And at the same time, was writing copy for this bike shop, as well as for several kind of local newspapers and other publications, magazines, and whatnot. And so we had a catalog that needed to get out in about 6 weeks, and the graphic artist just quit. She just stopped showing up to work, and I was the only guy in the office who knew how to start up the Mac. So I quickly said, "Hey, I think I can maybe handle this," and transitioned and basically became a graphic designer at the spur of the moment. Ran their shop for about 4 years after that. Actually, a little longer than that, 5 years, and then did some work as started to do development work. So built my first website in the mid '90s for that bike shop, and then went on to do a lot of agency work, .com stuff. Worked for a number of .coms, both kind of running small divisions of those companies, and eventually ended up working with a small team, and decided that I had learned enough to maybe go and give this a whirl on my own. And that was basically when we formed up with Relish Studio. I had 4 partners at the time, the 4 of us. And then we kind of whittled that down to 2. And now Relish Studio has been in business for about 12 years with 2 partners and a good team behind us. And our bread and butter is really website design and development work, but we do a lot of strategy, branding, and traffic work as well. I like to say that we do conscious marketing, which I think is something we're going to delve into a little bit today. But that's essentially our story. We really consider ourselves to be a kind of a purpose-driven business. We're a 1% for the planet partner, which means 1% of our revenue goes to environmental causes. We feel very strongly that a healthy economy, or a strong economy and a healthy environment, are not mutually exclusive, and so we can all do a lot more to help businesses and people kind of take care of our planet a little bit more effectively. So that's really what Relish is all about.
And how did you pick the name Relish? When you were saying all that, I was like, that's different.
Well, Relish Studio, actually, one of the partners had Relish Studio, and I and another partner, when we kind of commingled back in 2008 to form Relish as it is now. The business name that my other partner and I had chosen wasn't very memorable, so we took the Relish Studio name when we all kind of came together. But Relish really is it's a couple of things. One, it's that thing that you love, the thing that you love to do, and just wake up for every day is something that you relish, as well as it's that little extra spice on top of something that's already awesome that makes it even better. So that's kind of the dual meaning of Relish.
Well, that's good. I did wonder whether it was the condiment or the feeling, but you're saying it's at kind of both in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And so let's. One of the things I've done on Distinctions for Life, I do all kinds of things, but I did a whole series about how I call it the money flow framework, and it wasn't really about money. It was about the way money went through a business from the entrepreneur's point of view, not from like a sales point of view. But there were different stages that things go, and talked about building attention and delivering product and all that kind of stuff. And part of that was marketing. It's how do you get people's attention? It was part of that. I have a friend, Aaron, who was on here a while back. He does marketing stuff, and to him, everything is marketing. I find that people who are marketers believe that every part of your business is marketing. And therefore, everything should be approved by the VP of marketing, but that's all another story.
Right.
And in a sense, they're right. Everything is marketing. But in another, I would say marketing is part of everything. What your product is and how you deliver it. There's definitely an aspect to that determines something about your customer and whether they're going to come back and what they think of the company and what they're telling the other people. And that's all marketing. That's all part of marketing. For you, let's just start there. Let's say, how do you define marketing? And you specifically, Relish is specifically a digital marketing company. So I don't know if that makes it different than just a general marketing, but how do you define that?
Well, we look at marketing as an opportunity to build a relationship. And so whether you're trying to convince someone to buy, a $2 widget from your company, or trying to convince them that you're the right person to give, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to for a campaign, ultimately, the way that we look at marketing is from the perspective of you're not necessarily trying to sell, but you're trying to build a relationship. I think that's one place where traditional marketing has evolved quite a bit, and also has fallen short. Is people tend to jump right to the bottom of the funnel when going for those conversations. So it's essentially, "Hi, I just met you. Now give me all of your money," and that doesn't tend to be a great conversation. And so one of the things that we try to help our clients accomplish, and I think that more and more marketers are, hopefully leaning towards, is this idea that you're selling to an actual person, and that person has needs and wants and feelings and desires and all of those things, and also really likes to build relationships and likes to have a relationship, and likes to engage with people with whom they have a relationship, as opposed to just being sold to all the time. And so that's the way that we approach that's our approach to marketing, is essentially, how can we help facilitate a relationship and a conversation and get people on your side, which in the long term creates a much stronger bond and a much larger opportunity than just the transactional opportunity, which is what a lot of marketers are going for.
Right. And I think, especially in our new influencer driven sort of economy too, that you can't, there are very few things where people are just gonna meet you and pay you, right? Like that's, they have to have some kind of relationship with you. There's too many possibilities, too many opportunities, too much distraction, and all that stuff for you to kind of expect people to jump to the bottom of your funnel, right? Like there has to be a process. I think a lot of business owners and marketers would love it if that were the truth, right? That they could somehow write one magical page and everybody who came to it, or at least a high percentage of people, would just buy their product. They would like that because it's easier, but it's also not. It just doesn't. It's just not necessarily working as much. I don't know. Do you think that worked in the past?
I think that there's certainly commodity items
Hmm.
that
That's true.
everyone may need, and those items are typically a lot easier to sell, in that one click kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But even if you look at big retailers like Amazon or Walmart or Costco or places like that, they've they've done a good job of creating and building relationships. So when you go into Walmart, they have a greeter, and you're probably there looking for more of a commodity type of an item, and you're looking for it at a low or the lowest price. So that then, once you're in the store, um, those purchases are typically not relationship based necessarily.
Hmm.
Although there's still a relationship that goes on with you deciding to buy Coke versus Pepsi. That's another relationship that's been built up over time, uh, by those companies as well. So it's kind of a layered mix. But just getting you in the door, ultimately, something was created that drove you there, and the reason that people keep going back is that they like the experience. They know that they're going to get certain prices. They know they're going to get certain return policies, et cetera. And those have all been established over time. And so I would consider those to be, virtually relationships. I mean, people definitely engage with brands, and the way that things have evolved brands have kind of become, um, I think a lot of people feel like they have a relationship with that brand. Ultimately, there are people behind that brand who are driving that relationship. So it's still a people to people kind of transaction and engagement. And I think that that's one of the things that has in the past gotten a little bit lost in that marketing piece. It's essentially the, how can we get someone to buy this? And at the end of the day, that's what you're driving toward. But ultimately, it's a lot easier to convince someone that trusts you to make a purchase than it is just to try and do that out of the blue.
Right. And I think you made an interesting. Your examples were interesting to me because uh, you were talking about Walmart and Amazon and people like that, and those are retailers, and then they're selling stuff that somebody else is also marketing, right? Like you
Mhm.
said, Coke
Yeah.
and Pepsi. So there's like they're an aggregator of stuff, and I think a lot of the relationships sometimes with those particular brands, those retail brands, especially, are about identity. Are
Hmm.
you a Walmart shopper? I mean, I know people who won't shop at Walmart, period, right? Like, I am not a
Hmm.
Walmart shopper. I don't want to be identified as that. I'll go spend twice as much and it'll look twice as pretty at Target, or,
Right.
and then you have Target, right? So, like, there's an intentional sort of identity that those brands have built that people want to relate to, whether they have any sort of personal connection. You know what I mean? Like, you mentioned that there are ultimately people behind them that are building that relationship, but you don't
Mhm.
identify the person kind of in the same way you do when you're like maybe building a particular something online where your person is selling something. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, and this is a great segue, I guess, or uh, to take it one step further, I suppose is a better way of describing it. Is there are definitely people who are willing to pay more to go shop at another place because a relationship has been built with that company, whether that's a small business where the owner knows your name and greets you by name, or it's a Target versus Walmart kind of thing where for whatever reason, um, probably because of either a positive or a negative experience that you've had at one or the other of those stores, or what they do, with how they treat their employees, or whatever. Those are opportunities to those are kind of like little mini conversations that are being had, even if they're only being had in one person's mind. It's people make judgments like that, and people really look to work with and give money to those businesses that they feel like they have a connection.
And so, how do you define conscious marketing? And other than, well, I was gonna say, other than building the relationship, maybe that's the key of it. But can you tell me a little bit more about how you define that?
Yeah, so conscious marketing for us is really it's really looking at how do we create opportunities to build relationships and opportunities for back and forth conversations, and also really grounded in the foundation of conscious marketing is how do we as a company provide opportunities to um, be empathetic and to provide value to our audience, and whether that's through content creation and just helping people solve their problems, or through additional value add that goes on top of the transaction that's occurring. And so really from our perspective, conscious marketing kind of starts from the idea of I want to deliver value, and I want to serve, and I want to help people become that vision of themselves that they really want to be. And hopefully there's a positive component there as well. But ultimately, we're really trying to create mechanisms by which people can have an opportunity to do good things, as well as achieve everything that they're wanting to achieve through that relationship that's being built. And so if that's education, that's certainly a component of it. We do work with a lot of purpose-driven companies, so we're kind of intentional about who we're trying to work with. So really trying to help good people do great things, and so that makes it a little bit easier for us to have the conscious marketing conversation when it's not just how do I sell this widget to somebody at the lowest price, but more like how can we help our relishes clients enrich the lives of their audiences.
So when you say conscious, because it's interesting, the word conscious can mean a couple of things, at least in the modern sort of vernacular. It can mean that you're paying attention, right? Like that level, like I am conscious of my choices. It has this connotation of making conscious, positive value or moral choices, right? That so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
just looking at the thing I need to buy. I'm looking at where the thing came from and why it was there. So those it has those kind of decisions, and then whether something is right or wrong. Um, can you be consciously positive and buy tobacco or sell tobacco? I don't know. Um, you see, you have to. There's all those different connotations. So it's interesting to hear you
Yeah.
talk about that because obviously the purpose driven stuff or purpose companies that that is one aspect of that. But I think the relationship part of it is also an aspect of sort of the paying attention, the mindfulness, the consciousness of the interaction that you're having as a company
Yeah.
with your customer. So you do
Yeah.
have that
So
mindful.
I try and stay away from good and bad because everybody has their own opinion about what's right and wrong, I guess. I mean, I think that there are certain tenets that we all can agree to, uh, well, maybe not all of us, but we try to abide by, certainly,
Yeah.
golden rules and all those things. So we don't try to get into value judgment necessarily. I think that really when I'm talking about conscious marketing from the position of how we're going to help a potential client, it really comes back down to that thoughtfulness and being aware of how we're helping them create those relationships. So again, it's more relationship building than selling necessarily. I mean, at some point you get to the point where in that relationship there's some kind of an ask or some kind of an offer, but ultimately it's not it's not if we can get people to be thinking more about how am I going to build a long-term engagement and relationship with this person versus how am I going to quickly get them to buy something from me? That's really where we're trying to kind of root the idea of conscious marketing. Now, certainly from an agency standpoint, there are we're choosy about who we work with and who we help, and so there are a set of hoops that we try to have people jump through in terms of what type of business they are, and that's why we start to talk about purpose driven businesses. So we don't exclusively work with nonprofits or foundations. We work with a lot of them, and we don't exclusively work with 1% for the Planet Partners, for example. But certainly we are trying to help those business leaders who feel like they have an opportunity to change the way business is done, and have a real strong opportunity to give back and to take care of all of their stakeholders. So those are the kinds of businesses that we're really hoping to attract and to help. So people like B Corps and benefit corporations are certainly on that list of those types of companies that I think do great work, and we'd love to work with them.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment to our viewers that if you have a question for Stu, you can stick it in the comments, and we will answer it here on the show. And there is a URL that's scrolling down right here to Relish Studios, and they will do an audit of your site to tell you, give you feedback on your site and how effective it is as a marketing. I don't know what is this free site audit. Go ahead and tell us that, and then I'll ask another question that I
Sure.
come up with.
Sure. So the site audit is really one of the things that we're seeing, particularly in this time, is that people we have a lot of companies that come to us and they say, hey, I need a new website. And that's certainly a need, an express need. And one of the first things we do is really take a look at their existing properties, see what they're doing, how they're doing things, look at their site in general, and see if there are opportunities to improve upon their existing property before we do a full scrape and do a rebuild. Because a lot of the time, sites are actually look pretty good and are pretty effective. They just need a little love and a little attention to how to create those relationships and how to build those relationships. So one of the things, and I mentioned this a little earlier, that we see is a fairly common mistake among websites is that leap to the bottom of the funnel. I talk about this a lot. I was actually on another podcast just last week where we were talking about this very thing. But people basically, the only offer is essentially get in touch or buy now. And though those offers are great and need to be there because at some point, some percentage of your audience is probably ready for that, a much larger percent of your audience is probably not quite ready to spend a bunch of time on the phone with you or make a purchase today. that's where that nurturing piece comes in, where you really are trying to get people to move through the components of exploration. Do I have a problem? What really is my problem? Are these guys the right guys for me? Do they seem to care about what my challenges are? Are they listening to me? Yeah, I'm ready to make a buying decision. And so just moving people kind of through that natural progression is what we try to help accomplish when we build out sites. But the audit is really fine-tuned to look at an existing property, see where there are opportunities to improve the performance of that property, either from a technical standpoint. So, Google is really looking at page speed a lot right now. And so how do we improve the page speed of the site? How do we improve the metadata so that it performs better from a search standpoint? How do we help with calls to action? And the audit really goes into a lot of that stuff to really kind of dig into where are there opportunities to increase the ROI on an existing property rather than tossing it out the window and starting fresh, which has a much higher initial cost than doing a fix up. So that's kind of what that audit is all about, is trying to save people some time and money, because obviously tweaking some calls to action that's a lot faster than doing a whole website rebuild. So right now we're really, I mean, we've always leaned on this, but we're really leaning hard on this because we know that people are struggling to figure out how to improve what they have, and that's what this audit will help do.
Okay, so you guys can follow that link, and it's now in the comments, so you can follow it easily there and contact Stu if you want to take advantage of it. Do you ever see sort of the opposite of the going to the bottom of the funnel, which is that people build relationship and never sell anything?
Yep. I would say if there's one thing I have a problem with, it's that I just like helping people, and so I find myself turning down turning down money or opportunities at times. So certainly there's that, and I think that at the end of the day, we need the basic needs. We need to put a roof over our heads and have food and sustenance and time for recreation, and hopefully we're building out the opportunity to retire at some point. But yeah, I think that's the other thing that we see is people don't even have what am I supposed to do next on this page?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I would much rather see them have a leap to the bottom of the funnel at that point. If they're going to have nothing, then let's at least put a get in touch or buy something from me. But there are opportunities to build out a little bit more, a little bit more sophisticated funnel to help kind of nurture people. So yeah,
I
we
think you see
see
it too.
both of those sides.
I think sometimes I see that and I even struggle with it myself when uh, you're building a content sort of channel, right? So if you have
Mm-hmm.
a YouTube channel or a podcast or a successful blog or whatever, you may just be cranking out the content, right? You're building the relationship, but you never have a call to action really, other
Right.
than continue to build this relationship, stay part of, join my
Sure.
list or subscribe to my channel or whatever. There's
Right.
never a point where you're saying, here is something. And I
Yep.
think part of the problem with that and I can say this as a content creator, because I just this morning was going over the fact that I want to crank out more content. And I'm like, more
Mm-hmm.
content is not the solution. It's very easy to spend all your time doing that. Um, but you don't, but as a content creator, one problem you can have, and maybe you can address this, is that uh, you don't know when to stop giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
You know that you're going to be giving away content. You know that that's what you do, right? Like you're creating stuff, you're giving it to people. Um, when do you say, okay, now I've given all this stuff. Here is this other thing that may look like this similar, but in this
Mm-hmm.
case, you should pay for it. So,
Right. Right.
I mean, consultants can have
Well,
the same problem, right?
yeah, for sure. For sure. So I think, well, that leads me to think of a couple things. And the first thing is something that we subscribe to, which is the 10-4-1 rule. So if you're going to put out 15 pieces of content, have 10 of them be very not self-serving. So they might even just be materials that just help people in some fashion, where maybe you're adding a little bit of spice to an existing article. Maybe you're collecting information and distributing that. And so 10 of those items would be kind of in that ballpark. 4 can be a little bit more self-promotional. So maybe those are blog posts or self-created materials that you're putting out there. And then 1's an actual offer that's really that ask. And so that tends to be a really, kind of a starting point ratio in terms of just helpful information to hey, I actually want to sell you something here kind of approach. So that's something to take in mind when you're creating content. And then I think, and you and I met on Jason Van Orden's Catalyst Mastermind group. And I don't know the URL to his stuff, but he's fantastic. And so I would highly recommend you put that in the comments as well.
Yeah, well, Jason also was on this show. So if you go to
great.
the DFL channel or you look back on the page, you'll find Jason's live stream interview, which includes contact information for him as well.
Yeah. So what I think he would tell you is I think you're always going to be just creating content. You're going to be creating materials that hopefully help people, get to the next level of whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. What I think he would say, and what I think I would say, is to just keep your finger on the pulse of that material. And at some point you'll start to recognize that, oh, I have a package here. I have something that if I actually took these 5 pieces, I could put them together and sell them as a package, thought, leadership, informational, growth type of opportunity. And so I think naturally a lot of those things kind of come out of the materials that we're producing, particularly if we're really taking the time to be thoughtful about what it is we're producing and how it's going to help people. Mm-hmm. So I think that if we're coming from that mindset, that there's certainly some really great opportunities to have something to sell kind of fall out of that natural, altruistic approach to that material.
Right. I wrote that down because it's great. I always love to have like a great little framework here. So 10 pieces of content that are just providing value, 4 that are self-promotional, and you said that you created those. So are the other 10 stuff that like maybe you see around and you're telling people about kind of thing? Or
yeah, so if you think of, if you're going to be posting to Twitter 3 times a day, for example, or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever. So this is basically, and you're only going to do it on weekdays. So that's 15 pieces of content or 15 touches for a given week. Mm-hmm. During the course of that week, 10 of those can be kind of thought leadership stuff. So curated material. So things that you found that are inspirational or informational, that maybe it's a New York Times article about things that your target audience would find interesting. So for us, we might go to Digital Marketer, which is a great resource for digital marketing tips, or HubSpot, or any of these big channels that have articles that they've produced that we think are either interesting or we might be able to add just a little bit to. But ultimately, that initial piece is something that has some value. We recommend adding a little more value to that. So it's not just you're just blasting a link out there for no apparent reason, but maybe saying, hey, this is this cool new article that we saw on Vox the other day. I posted one the other day from Vox, actually, that was about how the whole office situation is probably going to change post COVID. Basically, I wrote a couple sentences, 2 or 3 sentences about why I thought this was interesting and important for people to read, and then posted it to LinkedIn and our other social channels, just because I felt like it was a valuable resource for people to start thinking about, how is your office going to change post COVID, or are you going to continue to go to that shared office space? What does that look like? And so adding a little bit of value to it, I think, is important. Then the next four are, typically materials that you or your business have created, kind of from scratch. And obviously, there are very few unique ideas anymore. We're always getting inspiration from somewhere, but this is more of a longer form type of article that is more, out of your own perspective or your own mind, as opposed to just 2 or 3 sentences. So this is something that you probably put a little bit more effort into. And so, like I said, those might be blog posts, or could be a content offer or something like that. And then the one is really that strong, solid ask, which is more. I mean, that itself could be a content offer. So that could go to a landing page where you're trying to get people to give you a value exchange. So give me your email address, and I'll give you this checklist of all the things you need to consider before doing a website rebuild, for example. Which is a content offer that we have up on our site. So just things like that tend to be that one where you're saying, hey, I actually need to make some money here. Here's something, again, trying to create an opportunity to exchange value, and build a relationship. So that becomes more of an actual value exchange opportunity. And it could be a course, or it could be an audit. Like normally our audits are about $300 to do that audit, but we're doing it for free for people in the short term, because we're just trying to help out.
Right. So that is good. That gives me some thought to how I use those things. And when I did the money framework, I talked about content syndication, and that's more about posting the same thing to different places. But so this is kind of a step back from that. So of the stuff you may post to different places, like you may post your Vox comment and article to LinkedIn, Facebook, all the places, right? But that's still just one piece of content.
Yeah. I would say this is all within a single channel. So think of that package as within a channel. And again, that's just a starting point ratio. And maybe that for your audience, it's 6 to 4 to 2 or something. It's all audience dependent, and that's definitely the starting point for everything is audience, and really figuring out where people are going to get information, who you're trying to speak to, what their big challenges are, what are they trying to accomplish, right? Why do they want that promotion, why do they want this to be a successful campaign, et cetera, and trying to get to the root of that and provide them materials that help move that forward is really that comes back around to that conscious marketing. If you're doing this to help people, then you're on the right track.
Yeah. And that is very true. One of the reasons I like something like this, as you say, it's just a starting point, but so often we have no starting point. I remember when I read Profit First, which is a book that I mentioned in the money framework at the very end, and he talks about, taking a percentage for profit and a percentage for taxes and owner's compensation, and so he has these 5 categories, and then OPEX, everything else comes out of the last one. And the interesting thing was he had a little chart, and he's like, if your company does this much, then here are your starting percentages. And that's so helpful, because you have no idea, in general, you have no idea what those percentages should be or what the factors are that, and the truth is those percentages will probably will change, but they're the starting point. And now you have something to say, okay, here's how I should break things up. And I have that starting point, and I can try stuff, find out if it works, find out what the reaction is, and modify based on that. So that's why I really like this little rule of thumb that you have here. Well, Stu, we've been going for almost 40 minutes now, and so we're gonna close up. But before we leave, I'm going to give you your opportunity to have an ask for anybody who happens to watch this, or is watching it now, or will watch it in the future, and then I will come in and close up the show.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. It's really fun to talk with you and explore the idea around conscious marketing a little bit further. Really, my ask is that everybody stay safe and be well. If there's something that I can do for you to help move your business forward in either during this pandemic or beyond, I'm here to help. You can find me online at relishstudio.com, RELISH studio.com. I'm on LinkedIn under my first initial last name, or you could just do a search for Stu Swineford. I think I'm probably the only one. That's kind of a weird name. And yeah, we're just here to help. So if you'd like for us to take a peek at your site, check out our offer, and be happy to do that for you. And again, thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you all for tuning in today. Whoops, solo me. There we go. Tuning in today and sticking around. Those of you who've been here the whole time. If you're watching this later and you're seeing the live streams recording, know that this happens Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we would love to have you come back again on Thursday. Let's see. And Ron, and this is the thing about Distinctions for Life. Ron's still figuring it out, and figuring it out is part of the process. So if you'd like to more and more about Distinctions for Life, you can always go to our website, which, I may have Stu do an audit of the Distinctions for Life website, because I think that would probably be interesting to hear what he had to say. And that website is distinctionsforlife.tv. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel or like our Facebook page. And I also put out an email every week that has 5 tools. Well, generally, it has 5 things in it. And that is a book that I'm reading or have just read, a tool that I'm using that I find useful, and that you might as well, a topic that you should think about, and a YouTube channel that you might like other than my own. And that comes out every Friday. And if you would like to get that, you can go to the website and fill out the email, and you will start getting those emails this Friday. Until next time, this is Distinctions for Life, and I'm your host, Ron Davis. Bye.